All right, so let's talk about the book itself. So you have a lot of contributors. Some I've met, some I met in Tulsa, some I met in Cambridge. I think one person I met in
Oh,
Cambridge.
you met John, right?
Yeah, gave me his card. So it was a lovely evening. We all spent in Harvard Square.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I
Oh,
appreciated that.
thanks for being the catalyst for all that. And there are many names listed. I see how many chapters? It's about six. There's 16 chapters, almost a different, I guess, person for every one. Um,
Mhm.
uh, uh, I guess we can't go through every single one because then if you leave someone out, then they might get insulted. But if you want to give an overview of the idea of like getting all these people together and maybe some examples of what people can expect when they get this book. Let Court go first this time.
I was going to
I'm going to be
a
like a
moderator.
game show host, yes, or something.
Well, there was maybe a third, I'm just guessing here, were people that we kind of knew and reached out. I know Sarah and Grayley and Rob and Laura, Nina, um, and Jim. Well, maybe more than a third. We knew personally already.
I knew
Um,
Simon too.
we
He was,
knew that I should
yeah.
explain it, but we had asked them and they were kind of immediate ends.
Mhm.
Simon, who I actually have not met personally, but is very great via email. And then we had a call for papers, and we ended up getting a few more really great essays that way. Um, so that's kind of and then there was a friend of mine who's actually a German scholar, and I was able to touch base with him, and he contributed a really beautiful essay on the bicentennial. And I was really happy on a personal level because he's someone who, was looking, hadn't written anything in this field before, really, and then turned this in, and it was really great too. So it's kind of I guess maybe about 50-50 people we had kind of known directly, and then a few people who responded to us. The general vibe is that people kind of took different uh, uh, chronological points, and we didn't have to really bend it too much. The
Mhm.
only thing I will say that we had to bend a little bit, but I think it worked out to our benefit, was Laura and Nina both kind of gravitated toward Shadow Kingdom. And I think both of them ended up with very different, interesting takes. And then what I does not want to get overlooked is Jeff Fallis, who's a wonderful guy, and he's a poet, and he ended up writing a series of poems, sonnets that
He,
what
no, I was going to say just to kind of plug him a little bit. The inaugural poet laureate of Athens, Georgia. So I mean, he's a pretty substantial poet, and he wrote to us. I jumped on your point because I was going to say the thing about. I mean, I think we're making the same points. I was going to say about Laura Nita's papers, but he wrote to us saying that he really was uninspired by, to write an academic essay, but he wrote
Mhm.
this crown of sonnets. And,
Mhm.
I think Court, you probably tell the story of the sonnets better than I do, so I will pass it back.
my knowledge of sonnets is slim, but I love them. And I'll tell you what, Jeff is a great. I mean, everyone that we've met and everyone we know, they're all beautiful people. And Harold, of course, Jeff was involved with us for the most recent conference, but Jeff was kind of like, this is what I have, and then we originally were like, okay, and I told him this. I think we both told us that we were like, okay, but how is this going to work? And by this point, we had been in contact with Rutledge, who put out the book. And we kind of went to, well, we didn't kind of, we went to Rutledge and we're like, well, we got one of the chapters is actually a collection of sonnets. And they never really blinked. I think they were
Mhm.
sort of like, well, how do you want it to work? And we got back the readers' reports that were kind of like, this doesn't really work, if I remember correctly. And
And
what?
No, I was just gonna say, like, we had that meeting where we were trying to figure out how to keep it because we liked them so much to,
It's cool. It was cool.
yeah.
I've got a side point there's a punchline to the rest of this, which Jeff does not know. And if he's listening, I had his,
Hi, Jeff.
but we then came up with this idea of an encore and then using as a set list. It's a bit too cute, but it worked. And then we have the encore that is the poems, which are not then necessarily connected. They don't kind of they're not into the pieces themselves. So you have the essays, then you have that, which is not a lesser than, it's just separate. But I will tell you this, Erin and I did the index, which is great. And it gives you a different take on the book. And it was, dare I say, fun to do. About 3 minutes of it was fun to do. 3 minutes of the 2 weeks it took. But then Jeff mentions all of these place names. And for some reason, we made the editorial decision, we did, as editors, to index the fucking poems. And what happens is that he mentions every place he played. And
In
so
one sonnet, right?
so there's like 2 page, I would say 30% of the index comes to 2 pages in the book, because he just, one of his poems is just the listing of things. And it's a great poem. It's wonderful. I'm glad he did it. But that was the one headache. And it got to the point where every time I was like, where's this term? That I wish I could remember the page number now. It was
So he texted me, if you find something, it's this. And then there was also that footnote, I think it was Laura's chapter, and it's a fantastic chapter, but that footnote is pretty extensive. So I said, if there's something there that you find, it might be on this page. We had fun doing it.
One thing I'll add is that everyone was very responsive, and everyone was open to whatever suggestions came their way. We really had a good working relationship with everybody. I think when it came down to crunch time and we had to get the page proofs and everything, everyone was just really great. And then we ended up meeting a couple people that I hadn't known before after the essay process, and it's just been really great. I mean, I think that these things can be either cold and academic, or you never. I mean, I've published book chapters and never had that. That was the end of that connection. And it's just been really great and gratifying to see, your friends and new friends and colleagues come together like this. It's really great. But to sell the book again, I would say that it's coming out from a completely different series of viewpoints. You have people talking about particular concerts. Graley, as most of your people know, Graley has a really beautiful essay that looks at a series of shows. There's that take. There's also kind of like what is Dylan doing at a particular moment in time. So like the 76 stuff. We have a really great essay on Hurricane. So you have particular songs, you have particular shows, you have Shadow Kingdom, and it kind of gives you a sense of how these different people are kind of making this work. And then at the end of it, sonnets.
I think that the sonnets we wanted to keep the sonnets, and the reviewer was kind of questioning how they fit. And, it is kind of a cute thing. Like, this is a book about set lists. And so we have an encore, but it really did solve the problem for us to allow us to keep those sonnets, which are really cool. I mean, you heard them in Tulsa. Jeff read a few of them and explained them. So I thought it was, it really worked, and it does put a really nice coda on the text, and, in a really lovely way.
And he's basically taking the set list and his response to them, the shows he'd seen and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's just a different engagement with them.
Yeah. And then we have Erin sort of took the lead on the intro, but sort of co-written, and then I sort of took the lead on the epilogue, but that's sort of co-written. And then we both have our own essays. So that's kind of the shape of it.
I can confirm Jeff Fallis, when I heard him give his sonnets at the end on the 80s panel, it was everyone loved it. It was just wonderful. I mean, I can understand the publisher or being concerned, but nothing to worry about. It was brilliant. One of the things that Erin was talking about before, that we were emailing back and forth, and why this book is different than what Paul Williams, the legendary crawdaddy editor, critic, and someone who Wade Robbins, who's I got to meet in Tulsa. He's someone I used to read in Newsday, Long Island newspaper when I was a teenager, and he told me actually that this is. I just want to give a little plug that I didn't realize what an influence he was on me as a writer, because I knew Michael Gray and I knew this, and I'd read him so long ago. He was in my DNA, but like, what a brilliant writer! He's just so, so missed and so great. But anyway, you wanted to talk about for those. I'm just saying that for those of you who don't know who he is, he's just a legendary Dylan critic, and so you were talking about what to bring him up as something to discuss here.
I think he's sort of, we owe him a great debt because Graley quotes him, and I think several of us do, and we like to go back to him. I think Port teases me a little bit because I lean on Paul Williams a lot, but so I think what's different is that we have, Williams does analysis and interpretation, but we have these different entry points into the set list that's unique, where we're looking at more how they're constructed, sometimes within a particular show, but in the run of shows and how the songs are repeated. And then, or one song, as Court was saying, where it appears, it's just a completely different analysis, like Court was saying about Song to Woody, where he's looking at what, it might suggest that when he plays it, because he doesn't play it often, or, the deconstruction of Hurricane in that period, or how the songs are playing off the bicentennial. And so it's looking at the set lists, with paying great respect to Paul Williams and the gift that he gave us in doing such great work, but it's building on it, I would say. And so there are just different entry points and different approaches. And what Graley does in his chapter, looking at the Warfield cycle as morality plays, or the Warfield residency, he calls it the Warfield cycle, as as morality plays, and really doing this deep academic analysis of what is going on in medieval morality plays, and how Dylan is playing on that is something that, again, it's building on how we approach a set list as something just for that same kind of intellectual or academic insight that we do with some of his other works. So I think that's where we see the difference. Would you add to that?
I would just add that there's a lot of books that are published on Dylan from a long time ago that don't really last. They don't really age well for whatever reason. But his have, they have, I think there's still the contributions that he gave are still ones that you go back to. And I think that it's really kind of heartening to see when you have scholarship that, or what, perspective that lasts.
And that was one of the comments that we got from the reviewer, that he was a close friend of Paul Williams, and he wanted to maybe, and I think we achieved this, but for us to show a little bit more deference to Paul Williams, because we were building on his work. And so someone else recognized that there's a foundation that Paul Williams has laid, that we're kind of, hopefully, if I don't know if we are, we're entering a conversation with him, so I felt proud of that.
And there's also this just came to mind, but there's a lot of humor in Dylan's set list too. The way he might do "I believe you" and then I don't believe you, and then "I believe in you," or right next to each other, or he might open the show with "Like a Rolling Stone," or during right after the first gospel tour, he does "Like a Rolling Stone" as the third song, as people are wondering if it's going to be another religious show, gospel show. And I remember one show he did, I don't remember exactly, but it seemed like he did Hollis Brown and Hattie Carroll and Blind Millie McTellen. It's a bunch of people, like Joey or whatever. It's just like a biographical thing. You just wonder, and there's a playfulness to a lot of this. You guys are obvious, and you can tell anyone watching that both of you know, not only are you well versed in Dylan, but there is a lightness to it too. I mean, it's a very enjoyable hearing you guys talk and reading the things that you've done, and I'm looking forward to reading the book when it comes out. But there it's not just, oh, he did this and he did that. I mean, there are just so many. It's like a whole spectrum, and I don't use that word lightly. Spectrum of of what he decides to perform, and as I say, this most recent tour is seems like a play. I think in 2014, I had the same kind of feeling when it was there was even an intermission, and it seemed like a play. And I know you kind of touched on this, but maybe just to summarize, I mean, as I'm talking to you, I'm realizing people haven't read the book, and I'm trying to help them understand. I think if it's doesn't sound too condescending, what's going on, and why set lists are so interesting. Which, I mean, you've kind of talked about it, but just in and of itself, the set list, why is it interesting?
What I would add to that is that if you look at the last, like the Rough and Rowdy tour as a conglomerate, the set lists have, well, let's just take this year. The set lists have not deviated very much. There's a set list. But I think that's what the set list is actually the kind of the enigmatic piece, because you would think they're all the same. But I've seen, I guess, 4 shows over the last few years, and different songs hit you, and different songs are played slightly differently, and he's playing them slightly. And it might be a matter of degrees, but this last show I saw, I was just struck by my own version of You, which is not a song on the set list. I was like, I can't wait to hear that. I mean, I like the song, but it wasn't like, I can't wait to hear that. And that song blew me away. Like, I'm just standing there, and it's something musical is going on. His Jerry Pentecost, the new drummer, is fantastic. And there's a vibe that so it's kind of goes against our book, which is like, it transcends the set list. The set list now is not as important as the performance. I guess that's maybe a weird thing to say. But I think when you see the set list over and over and over again, you're like, well, is it the same thing? And I don't think that's true at all. I think these performances have a lot of space in there. But I think I'll forever be interested in it. And I think I'll forever be interested in, like, what does this mean, and tracking it, and how many times you go to a show and then you leave and then no one posts the set list. And you're like, how come no one did it? Of course, I'm not doing it either. Of course, without phones. So they have the Yonder bag, which everyone loves, right? You lose your phone for a while. This is a true story. At Portchester, my guy next to me had a laptop. Phones. This man is doing Excel spreadsheets before the show. He has a lap. How'd the laptop get in there? Why'd you bring a laptop? And of course, phones. But then I started thinking, what if he was using the laptop camera and was trying to
get a really big Yonder.
Yeah, you get it. Your Yonder bag, sir. Your Yonder bag is special ordered to come your direction. But anyway, yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, I didn't tell you, Court, that the third night in Chicago, I had the Zoom, the recorder on me, because I just recorded with Henry Bernstein, and it was in my pocket. And someone said, you could have recorded the whole show. I said, well, I'm not going to do it. You made me think of this, that, like, well, about posting the set list. Like, I'm not going to record it. I'm not going to, but I hope someone else recorded it so I can listen to it. And then Benny Boy cleans it up for us.
I do love not having phones at a show. I hate to be that person, but it is nice to be without it. The hour and a half before the show without a phone, heartbreaking. No. But then, you see a guy on his Excel spreadsheets, and you're like, it could be worse. Are you doing a power? What are you doing? What work do you need to bring with? My God, man. But anyway, no, it's nice. It's nice in the moment because it's not a distraction, but
right.
I get it.
Yeah. And people still manage to record. It's just not intrusive. And I think
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
No pictures, no recording, and then 10 minutes after the show, here's 7 photographs. Here's a beautiful bootleg you have.
Well, how was it in Portchester? Do they do it on the honor system? And when you saw them in Boston, because there are people walking in, like I was at the yonder table and people were just walking past me and they
Mhm.
hadn't gotten their pouch yet. So, I mean, I don't know that there's any regulation per se.
Yeah, I was wondering if it, I was asking this beforehand, but it's like you go through detectors, but I guess their
Right.
phones are metal or
But you
whatever.
go through them first and then you get the yonder. That's how we did it in Chicago, or that's
And
how
I
it was done
think
in Chicago.
I saw someone else in Providence before with the first
Okay.
time with the yonder, way over yonder in Providence, and yeah, I don't remember. I think they did the pouch first, but
Okay.
and but I'm wondering if Dylan or Dylan's management doesn't really care about the recording per se. They just don't want the distraction of the phone. They want people to enjoy the be you know connecting to the music the way he would say he connected to Buddy Holly, and if people record the shows, I mean, I guess that is maybe not. I guess it's okay.
Well, without photographs or without the greatly reduced photography, I saw, and also Portchester was general admission, so we could get to the rail.
Yeah.
So it was the closest I've ever been to him, like literally, like it was stage piano distance from him,
Mhm.
and it was lit differently than the first part of the tour where it was, he wasn't behind the upright piano, he wasn't
Mhm.
lit all in browns and bronzes,
Mhm.
and it was noticeably striking to be that aware of his presence, like his physicality, messing with his hair, putting the hat
Mhm.
on, taking the hat off, the smiles. It's like the Scorsese filmmaking where Scorsese's really good at getting the cross looks, but seeing him smile at each of the band members and have like whatever private thing that they were dealing with. These were not AI recreations, or there's a living band that has like this real vibe. I totally understand why people, if they flew into this, would be like, this is not what I want. I totally get that. Um, but I've also never had that perspective. And I don't know if Portchester was the greatest show of this tour, necessarily, but it was really good. And I just really enjoy what he's doing. We also we got which I might save a little bit later, but we got the Merle Haggard Footlights the second time.
Mhm.
Time he played it, and there's something in that song that is obviously touching him. Like it's a really great song, and for him to kind of dig into those covers the way he's doing, it's a little bit of a surprise. It goes back to the static set list, it's coming. um
Mhm.
but yeah.
I kind of feel like of all the ones he's done on this tour, South of Cincinnati hit me differently.
Which
And I
ones?
can't imagine South of Cincinnati.
Uh-huh.
And I can't imagine like Greeley was there, he was fourth row. I can't imagine being there. And I was actually with you in Boston. We were at the table when Greeley texted me
Yeah.
because I texted him like, did you put your phone like is your phone in the yonder pouch? He's like, I'm about to do it. Like right when he got out, and I think we were still together, he texted me South of Cincinnati, and it was just, and then I forget who sent me the audio the next day, but it's stunning. It's just his voice sound, his phrasing is lovely. The music is just it's beautiful. So I think of all the covers this tour, that one has been my favorite. And then Greeley was mad that he sang it in Akron too, because it wasn't unique.
Yeah. So he's like, yeah, he did that Merle Haggard song again. I thought
Yeah.
that's the one
That was for
time he
us.
ever did it.
Right.
Yeah.
You want, but yeah, I mean, that was the thing too. I mean, I wrote a review, but it's like, I was going in there thinking, I know what it's going to be. And like, I knew I was lying to myself as I was saying this, but it's like, I know what the songs are going to be, maybe one different or maybe two different or whatever. But everything was, I mean, in the presence, especially the way he is now, he's really like this oracle or something in the middle, spouting all this stuff, which, some is easy to understand, some is not very easy to understand. and you're just in his presence, and particularly the second night he was smiling the whole night, which was odd. Just he seemed to be incredibly happy, and when he did I'm getting my nights mixed up, but the first night is it Doug Lancio? Is that the guy's name, the guitarist? So he said, "Hey, on guitar, Doug Lancio, play something," and he just played like nothing. And Bob said like that's it. And so the next night he said, "Hey, play something," and he starts playing Dirty Water. And it was, and Dylan was laughing. I think that's when he told his dad joke. And then the last night he played some nice little thing, and Dylan smiled at that. But it's like there's this feeling on stage. Like another thing that I noticed was again the last two nights I was up close. First night I was kind of far back, but during Old Black Magic, that's the name of it, right? That Old Black Magic. Sometimes I'm saying things I'm not sure I'm saying it, but the interaction between Tony and Bob Britt, they were just like smiling and like we were playing all this jazz stuff. I mean, there's all this stuff going on stage, and there's this vibe there that this tour is really, really, really special. I mean, I kind of say that all the time, but it just, I mean, I think you feel it too. It's like he's really engaged. His singing is great. His piano playing, he's the instrumental guy. He's the lead guy, and just going on and on, but we're reliving it right now. Yeah,
it's got to be hard to play with him playing piano because he throws so many different things, and they're rhythmically, melodically playing different things. The only thing I would say too is that if we had the book now going into press, there got to be an essay on how Bob and his connection to place, how he's. I mean, before he was playing the cover songs, every stop he makes some comment about. I saw him in Louisville, and he was talking about Louisville Sluggers, right? He made a little joke about everything. Right.
And there's Bottom in DC, yeah.
There's something that is connecting him in some way to these concerts, and I think that's really, really cool. But yeah. And
I think that too. Like, I want to kind of go back to something that you're right. We would have to talk about that. And you actually added something to the to our I can't get to the conclusion of the book when he played Friend of the Devil, and so we were like, oh, we have to, because he had been ending with Every Grain of Sand, and so you did something really lovely with that in the conclusion of the book. But we would have to include that, and I think something that when I was writing my chapter, I went back and listened to the bootlegs of all of the shows that I was writing about, just to kind of hear the difference. And so we can't, like Paul Williams says, we can't ever recreate that ephemeral moment of being in the place at that time, because there was like Saturday night show. I mean, the crowd was into it, and they were like hooting, and Bob was like responding to that, and he was smiling. You're right, like messing with his hair. And then the Sunday crowd was just kind of, and he seemed a little crankier on Sunday night. And the Friday was great. As soon as he opened with Born in Chicago, people lost their minds. But that there was something really
I lost my mind, and it wasn't even there.
But as soon as and it was just a different feel on Saturday night. Maybe it was because people, didn't have to work and weren't coming from, I don't know what it was, but that the energy of the Saturday night crowd, and I was so much different. And I think, I'm not sure, and people who were there Saturday night can either attest to this or debate me. I don't think Truckin' was on the list, because he turned to Tony right before it and he said something and Tony nodded, and then they launched into Truckin'. And I think that he was just having so much fun that it just, with the crowd was having fun, and he just launched into it, and we all lost our minds then as well. But so those are the moments that I think, you're right, just seeing the set list on paper, you can't, it doesn't tell the full story. But then looking at the connections, like if someone's writing about them and listening to the music and kind of making those connections, and how some of his phrasing on Friday night may be different than Sunday night. And those are the nuances that I think make, the live performance so interesting. But then also, we're kind of looking at how it's the same song. And someone said, you're going to see him 3 times in a row. Isn't it the same show? And I said, it's never the same show. So I think that's what makes not only the set list, but then live performance so fascinating.
One of the couple of things that I've been thinking about since the show, and I haven't had, as we spoke before, and I haven't had time to hardly think about anything, but there were two things that just came to mind. One was like the third song he puts on his hat, it's like there's a certain plan, we
had hatless Dylan. We never got a hat.
Where? What do you mean?
In Chicago.
Oh, you never got a hat. Well, I guess, some shows are just cooler than other shows. But also I noticed when at the end of the show, they used to line up together, and now Bob's in front and the other ones are in back. And but also he starts walking backwards. It reminded me of this Charlie Chaplin thing where he would just I'm walking backwards. I'm gonna.
I love when he comes to the other microphone and just stands. I love that. He just comes out and sort of accepts the audience, and he goes back to. I love that. But we had hat off, and then hat on, and then hat off, playing with the hair. Hat on, hat off, playing with the hair. There's a lot of that going on.
A new book.
I was just gonna say that's the sequel.
That's the next book. Bob in hats.
And the
Scott
hats.
Will tell us that all comes from like a film from 1956 or something, and blow our minds. Like, oh wow, it's true. That's great. It's always great. And also, this is an obvious point that everyone says. I can't think of another analog to this of someone that age going out with a new record and playing. I guess he cut one of the songs, but he's playing all but 2 off the new record. And
now all but 1, yeah. Right.
It's nuts. It really is. I don't know. Paul McCartney's not coming out and playing McCartney 3, Hackney Diamonds. If the Stones go back out, they're not playing Hackney Diamonds all the way through. I mean, they might play a couple of songs, but there's just nothing like it. And he's still there, and it's stunning to see. It really is stunning to see.
Do you ever read Bob Lefsetz's on his the Lefsetz letter?
No.
Okay, so he's a very he writes more than anyone. Every day he has a very long email about music. And I don't always agree with what he says or his taste in music, but he's always very provocative and interesting. And he talked about Bruce Springsteen, and he's saying that the audience owns Bruce Springsteen. Like they and that goes true with almost everybody, but no one owns, Bob Dylan owns his audience. I mean, everyone, it's like, what's Bob doing? Whatever Bob's doing, let's figure it out, which is what this book is about too. It's like, what's he up to? And we have this tendency to praise whatever he does to a certain extent. Some people are more critical than others, and kind of going off on a tangent here, but he's playing theaters, and since Dylan's playing theaters, he doesn't have to worry about $450 tickets in the front. Well, I guess there are some, but $450 tickets in a stadium, and he has 15 people on stage to make up for the fact that he's playing in a big place. He's no different than when he was playing Hibbing High School. He's playing a little theater, and take it or leave it. And if you don't get it now, you'll get it later. This attitude. I mean, it's been proven time and time again that, hey, that I didn't get it then, but I get it now. And I think the three of us, at least when they're happening now, I think we're pretty caught up. I think we what he's doing, we're pretty, we accept what he's doing right away. And even though it takes a while maybe to sink in. Does that make sense?
What I have liked to have seen Stella Blue, like the second night in Portchester, yes. But I'll accept the very beautiful rendition of Footlights, which was stunning. But we have Jim Salvucci put together the Dilettantes, and we have a podcast that we put together occasionally. He brings us together. It's Erin, me, Grayley, Rob Virginio, Nina.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really enjoy about that group of people is that they are all very critical thinking people. Nina and Rob can come up with stuff that is just real heavy. It's just like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
They all can. but then Grayley is so interesting to me because he's always our last conversation was sort of like best, what was it, kind of hot takes,
It
right?
was like it was, I think, make a case against a beloved song and make a case for a reviled song.
Yeah.
Or a less an underrated song, I guess, right?
Right. No one was touching Wiggle Wiggle, but
No, and no one really came out with guns blazing. I remember calling Grayley. He's like, "Oh, what's your negative?" He's like, I don't have one." Like,
Right.
and it's like this positiveness, not uncritical, because Grayley is one of our most agile minds on this. It's not uncritical, but it's like, let's talk about the positive. Let's talk about the stuff that gives me joy in life. And I'm speaking for him now, just for that conversation.
Yeah.
But that was really cool to see, where you can, it's not about just there are people out there whose entire job is to tear down others.
Yeah.
Name redacted. Names redacted.
Who could you possibly be talking about?
That shit is so tiresome. And to
Yeah.
have a group of people be able to say, well, this is what still thrills me after all these years. And all these years, I'm not, whatever. But I think that's so beautiful. And to have that positive attitude about things. And let's talk about that. I mean, again, I may be making more out of it than I should, but I just really like that. And going back to the book, to have all these contributors, a lot of them are on the younger age of things. Really great. I was glad we were able to do that. To have people come with some of these conferences, we've been able to talk with some younger people who are just, they are saying the best stuff right now, and they're saying really interesting things, and coming at from different directions, and stuff that there's no expectation as to what they should or should not like, and they're coming at it from exactly the way you want to see people coming at it. It's like, oh no, you've ignored this. This is great. Or isn't this weird? It's like, I've never thought about it. And I think that is why people can wring their hands about what Dylan's studies is and Dylan's scholarship, but there's a lot of really cool people saying some really cool things. And these conferences, I think, show that off.
Yeah, it's like I remember it's not a direct quote, but I remember Rebecca Slayman talking about people my age and saying, you're all brainwashed by Rolling Stone or something like that. And that was our roots, because we didn't have that much to read, and we all had the same kind of roots, and then we went in our own different ways. But it's true, like with the younger people, they don't have, they can get all the music all at once. I don't even know how they do it. I mean, how can you even listen to all this music and absorb it all? But also, when you're younger, you can have that passion still, which
the stranglehold some of that stuff had on me, it just, man, the stuff I thought I had to like, that stuff doesn't exist in the atmosphere at all. People in their 20s and 30s. But I remember thinking, well, the record guide says that this is a 5-star record. I think it's dog shit or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I've got to like this, or I got to like that. And that attitude is, I'm not saying it's gone, but that attitude is, it's not how people are approaching any of this stuff anymore.
Well, I just think that they have a different sense of who the authority is. And, they're the authority. Yeah, exactly. And that was something that I appreciated. And I said this in my talk with Laura, that, when she kind of went after, certain aspects of the misogyny in the first generation Dylan scholarship, I was like, it wasn't impolite, but it was showing how, like, this is how we move the conversation forward. And, if we're going to continue to move the conversation forward, we have to challenge those authoritative voices that came before us, or not challenge them, but debate, wrestle with them, puzzle out what they're saying to add to the conversation. And I think what you're saying, the younger generation is doing that really well. And, hopefully our little contribution to that conversation does something as well.
Yeah, like, and our talk was on the 1980s, which we're all trying to recontextualize and just say, at the time, I mean, I lived, I remember living through the 80s, and and I was into Dylan in the 70s, and then I read Michael Gray's second Song and Dance Man book, and that's when I got really into him, right in just in time for the 80s. And so I would get knocked out loaded and think, it's is it as good as Highway 61? That's irrelevant. It's like, compared to everything else coming out that year, I mean, there was, not that there weren't other good records, but it was probably the most fascinating, and probably the only thing I would probably listen to from 1986 at any time in the near future, because there's something there to dig into. And it's also the cliche of like, well, there's Brownsville Girl. It's like, yeah, but there is, you want to ramble. I mean, I listen to you want to ramble, which is not, that I can go on about you want to ramble. I can ramble about you want to ramble for quite some time, because it's just, it's just there, and it's just, it's waiting to be rediscovered. And if you go where your mind goes, where it goes.
I go back to the original point we were talking about with what Dylan provides is so much. And there's a record that is this secret? I don't think it's secret. Erin and I are co-writing an article, an essay.
An essay on. Yeah, we were. I think we are.
But the idea,
we were asked to,
and we haven't committed to it. So this is a
we have semi-committed.
But the idea that Erin brought to the table was something to do with Together Through Life, which is honestly a record that I never listened to that much. I listened and enjoyed it, and then sort of was like, what, the Houston songs on. I knew the Houston songs. But I was like, but going back to it, there's some really beautiful playing on it. Like it's a really kind of undervalued. I mean, even a record that's only a few years old is like, well, that's kind of undervalued. Because it's not Love Is Theft, and it's not Rough and Rowdy Ways. What?
I know. I love that you said that, because when I mentioned it, you said why, and I said, well, I think there's good stuff on it, but I was like, and I don't know that it's really written about that much. And you said, I love your positivity and your openness to some of the crazy ideas I have, that you're like, I'll listen to it tomorrow. And clearly you have. And, we've just been so busy and traveling and whatnot that we haven't really talked about it again. But yeah, I think, I that's one of the things I think, Harold, you asked a question of like, what are some of the challenges of working, that we came upon with this book. I think mostly was our own lack of experience, but working with Court, who is incredibly kind and open-minded, and and I just think that was, and brilliant, was one of the best parts of it. And then working with our contributors too.
And also, yeah, no, it was great.
Are you laughing at me?
I was crying.
Oh,
those laugh crying. You go either way. It's very ambiguous. I think it's
okay.
Laughing to tears or laugh together through tears.
Okay.
There's a shout out on the acknowledgments to a coffee shop here in town, because we would meet at this coffee shop and we would sometimes have breakfast or espressos or whatever. And it was like, there were times that we were just kind of getting each other's nerves. We'd have these like sort of bickery sessions. And
I think we're like siblings sometimes.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that. And then it was kind of like, but we know what we got to do. And we realized, I think that coming through it. And also, this is something that we didn't have a real model of, but it's kind of like, how do we divide stuff up? And there'd be times when we would feel the other person was, really doing a lot more, and you'd feel like, oh goodness, she wrote that email. I know. But then you kind of talk it out and you realize that, some emails are going to get written, and these emails are going to be written by me, and sometimes they're going to take the lead and you're going to take the lead. But
Yeah.
it worked out. It wasn't ever a moment, at least on my end, where it's like, I'm doing all this. It was so great and gratifying to have the second person sort of bounce ideas off, to sort of make sure we're going in the right direction, to kind of navigate and negotiate with the press, which was good. But, our communication there was still sort of, a little bit of a challenge, just as all these things can be. So it was a great experience on that level too. And then when I said at the very beginning that I don't know if I do it again, of course that's not true. And I think that the two of us are clearly wanting to do something together again, Together Through Life. Also, that record, I don't remember people really talking about Robert Hunter that much. Robert Hunter, that's kind of the whole record. Anyway, all the three Grateful Dead triumvirate here. The triangle of Grateful Dead people will, of course, connect to that too.
Uh,
But yeah, we'll see.